Finances in Formula One are a tricky thing. The sport has a long history of bankrupting teams, whether it's Kimi Raikkonen milking Lotus dry in bonus payments, or the Surtees team losing all three of their cars to a first-lap pile-up at the 1973 British Grand Prix. This is a sport where it's easy for things to go wrong very quickly. The assets, meaning the cars, are very expensive, and they're at massive risk of being destroyed 24 weekends of the year. Also, the flow of money that funds the teams is fragile as well. Sponsorship deals can be fickle. As recently as 2022, Haas had to drop their title sponsor Uralkali, losing tens of millions of dollars a year in funding overnight. Fortunately for Haas, they're a team run on a budget already with minimal overheads by F1 standards. But for the rest of the grid, losing that kind of money could be terminal, something Mercedes and Sauber could be about to discover. Today, I'll check out the financial troubles which threaten to rock Mercedes and Sauber in 2025 and how they could destroy Mercedes' chances of competing in 2026. So, don't go anywhere. When the budget cap was introduced to Formula One in 2021, it was meant to provide financial security to the smaller teams, ensuring that they didn't have to get involved in an arms race they couldn't afford to compete in. It also stopped the larger teams from spending $500 million a year on development, giving them a massive competitive advantage. The overarching aim was to provide better competition and protect the sport from a financial collapse. The list of teams that have folded over the years is huge. Often the parts get bought up by a new team, like when Red Bull bought Jaguar, but the uncertainty of who would be on the grid each year was a problem. That's no longer the case though, and in theory, with good financial management, no team should be at risk of going bankrupt and dropping off the grid. However, planning for the loss of your biggest sponsor is almost impossible, especially if they're a part owner of the team. Ineos are a company you may have heard of before. They're a UK-based company who do a ton of different things, but their core business is chemicals. They bring in billions of dollars a year from that business, but recently they've started to diversify, with business owner Sir Jim Ratcliffe fancying himself as a sports team owner. They recently purchased 25% of Manchester United in a deal worth $1.65 billion. They own a third of the Mercedes F1 team and are the main sponsors of the All Blacks, New Zealand's national rugby team, as well as running their own cycling team. The problem is that Sir Jim's sports team hasn't been doing a great job with their new sports teams. Man United are a mess of an organisation at the moment, and the mass layoffs within the team have been heavily criticised by fans and the media. The cycling team are desperately searching for new partners to help fund them. More worryingly, however, is what is happening with the All Blacks. The All Blacks have launched legal proceedings against Ineos this week, accusing the company of failing to pay the first sponsorship installment for 2025, a deal which has 3 years remaining. Sir Jim Ratcliffe has blamed high energy costs and the deindustrialization of Europe for its alleged breach of a sponsorship agreement with New Zealand Rugby, exposing a loss of revenue within the core business as a problem for their sports teams. New Zealand Rugby said on Tuesday the global chemical company had not sent the first installment of this year's payment, leaving it no choice but to take legal action. Ineos said in a statement, however, that it remained in discussions with New Zealand Rugby and had looked to adjust its sponsorship as it tries to cut costs across the business. Attempting to adjust a contracted sponsorship agreement is not something that the All Blacks will be happy with. Ineos signed a contract to pay New Zealand Rugby $4.5 million a year, and they'll want that money. Now at this point you're probably wondering why I'm talking to you about rugby sponsorship deals and what they have to do with Mercedes. Well, if Ineos are struggling to pay $4.5 million a year in sponsorship, and they're trying to cut costs wherever they can at Man United, what are they going to do at the Mercedes F1 team, of which they're 1/3 owners? When Mercedes was spending $500 million a year operating as an F1 team, Ineos would have been fronting in excess of $100 million a year to keep them going. With the budget cap in place, that number's probably much lower. We don't know the exact expenses of running the teams. Obviously, the budget cap is $135 million a year, but they can spend money in other areas outside of the budget cap as well. Mercedes also have their powertrain division, which has its own operating costs outside of the normal budget cap. If Ineos are gutting Man United of staff to save money, searching for sponsors for their cycling team, and being taken to court by New Zealand Rugby, then they must be facing the same financial problems at the Mercedes F1 team. Fitch Ratings and Moody's, which provide financial health checks for most big companies, said Ratcliffe's chemicals business had racked up debts that were between 5 to 6 times larger than the company's annual earnings. The credit agencies have both downgraded their outlooks for the company to negative, which could dent its ability to borrow from the lending investment banks at the same terms as it was offered in the past. Ineos are in big trouble. There are red flags all over their business, and Mercedes will feel the effect of that. Mercedes, the car manufacturer, and Toto Wolff, who each own a third of the team along with Ineos, should be worried. If they lose Ineos, that will have a huge impact on the team's cash flow, and as the teams start preparing for the new engine and aero regulations in 2026, the last thing they want is to be having to cut costs. It is such an important time for an F1 team to be working at full capacity, and if the team starts having funding problems, that could cripple their preparations for the new regulations. Now, the odds of this becoming a really serious problem for Mercedes are probably slim. If Ineos do have to sell off some of their share of the team, then there would be a bidding war to take it on. Formula One is more popular than ever at the moment, and owning a share of a team can be profitable now as well, especially if they're successful, and Mercedes definitely can be. Mercedes aren't the only team though with financial concerns at the moment, but before I talk about that, if you're enjoying the video and want to catch all the news and analysis in the lead up to the 2025 F1 season, then please press the like button and subscribe to F1 Reverse. Thanks a lot. Stake.com, the online casino that sponsors the Sauber F1 team, is to give up its license to operate in Great Britain amid a regulatory review of the company's practices, including a promotion fronted by a porn star. The Gambling Commission began an investigation in response to the appearance on the social media platform X of a video featuring the adult star Bonnie Blue, featuring Stake's branding. In the video, Bonnie Blue boasted a stunt in which she tried to have sex with barely legal 18-year-olds in their first year at Nottingham Trent University. Stake's branding has also appeared on other viral videos on social media, including some featuring violence and other graphic images. There have been a number of investigations into the brand's very shady practices over the past few years, and this is the one that has broken the camel's back. What this means is that the Stake branding won't be visible anywhere at the British Grand Prix. Now, this has happened before, with the Stake branding being removed from everything the team owned at the 2024 Dutch Grand Prix. Luckily for Sauber, they're one of the few F1 teams that has almost no presence in the UK, with their main base being in Switzerland. At this point, it seems unlikely that Sauber are going to lose their title sponsor for the entire season, and with just 1 year left of the Stake Sauber deal before Audi take over in 2026, the financial impact of that happening, if it did, wouldn't be as drastic as what could happen to Mercedes if Ineos encounter serious financial problems. At Mercedes, there is definitely a worrying situation developing, and it'll be interesting to see if Ineos' financial woes has any impact on the team's preparations for 2026. If it hinders their engine development for the new regulations, then McLaren, Williams, and Alpine could also feel the effects. If you're a Mercedes fan, are you worried about what could happen to your team? Or do you think they'll be able to survive if Ineos has to pull out? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.